Today on the Save It for Parts channel, we're looking at another obscure vintage tech review. This is a Datamyte 3053 terminal thing. I'm kind of a sucker for weird tablet computers, so when I saw this thing come up at a surplus auction, I threw a $20 bid at it and I won. Now, it didn't come with any accessories, and apparently what this does is interface with specific tools like torque wrenches, micrometers, and then when you're making a product or doing a production line, this kind of tracks and records certain information about your product. If you're making something like a jet and you want to make sure all your bolts are tightened, you could use something like this. Or if you're a certain jet manufacturer, maybe you just don't bother tightening any bolts. Anyway, since I don't have any tools or attachments for this thing, I figured I'd just bring it home, turn it on, and see if we can do anything else with it. Now, right off the bat, the quality on this feels really flimsy. It's got this like cheap injection molded plastic. It's really thin. You can feel it warping. This feels like a toy. Even the battery compartment here, this is like what you'd get on an RC toy. I don't know if this is one of those newfangled CR 69 420s or if this is just 4C batteries glued together, but yeah, it looks weird. This whole thing just literally feels like it came from a toy store. It says it was made in the USA in 2007. Now, I've noticed a trend lately of companies trying to go back to manufacturing in the US, but unfortunately, US manufacturers are about 20 to 30 years behind everyone else. So while this was made in the USA in the early 2000s, it feels like it was made in the 1990s by Hasbro. We have kind of some ports back here. We have these that look like VGA ports, but I think they're actually serial, and it looks like those go to a torque wrench. These other little ports go to a micrometer. We've got some kind of angle measurement sensor. It looks like we have audio, and then a couple more of these ports here. This might be serial, and this almost looks like some kind of network port. But of course, with industrial stuff like this, they have to make up their own connectors so that you have to pay extra money for stupid adapters and whatnot. The power switch here is also kind of weird. It has 3 positions: off, center, I guess on, and then momentary, actually on. All right, well, this is a little frustrating. I'm not getting anything out of it. I've had it charging here for a while and I do have it plugged in, but that weird battery might just be dead. I've let the thing charge up a little longer, and I actually unplugged the power supply because it seems like maybe it works a little better without the wall adapter. So it is trying to do something now. All right, I don't know how visible that is on the camera, but we did get a loading screen there, and now we're in a menu. Yeah, the camera does not want to focus on this. Again, 20 to 30 years behind the times with this old monochrome, not backlit LCD screen. This is one of those devices that probably cost like $20 to manufacture it in the 90s, and then they charged some poor company $1,000 to install the thing. Most of our menu items here are grayed out, probably because we're not connected to anything. It looks like we can create a setup or configure some lists. We can go into some options. We can configure gauges. We can configure reports. We can set up preferences, or we can look at information about the machine. That brings up that boot splash screen again. And yeah, it looks like this was designed and built right here in Minnesota, Plymouth, Minnesota. We have a help menu in here. So pretty much like I thought, you can input information about your measurement tools, you can create reports and charts, you can put stuff into a database. Presumably you can export it through one of those other interfaces. So if you want to trace the manufacturing of some product widget, you can put all the information about it in here, measure things along the way during your manufacturing process, and then I guess when there's a court case about what you made, theoretically you've got all the logs of how you made it. Anyway, not super interesting or useful for my purposes because, again, I don't have any of the tools. The auction company didn't have anything else with this. They supposedly had a power supply, but they couldn't find it when I went to do the auction pickup, so I'm just running this off of a Gateway laptop power supply. We've got this little rubberized keyboard, which again feels like a toy. Not very convenient, especially because it's, you know, A through Z instead of QWERTY. So about the only other thing we can do here is go to configure preferences. Yeah, I don't know what to do with any of this, and it's not really applicable to me because, again, I have no accessories for this. Let's go ahead and see what's in this thing. Because it's kind of a backwards toy-like design, there are no security screws in here. You are apparently encouraged to open this thing up and mess with the calibration if you need to fudge your numbers down at the factory. I certainly shouldn't complain about the lack of security screws. I hate weird screws. I love Phillips screws. I want this to be the only screwdriver I ever need, and this is the only one that lives on my desk in the office, and for 90% of the things I work with, yeah, it is the only screwdriver I need. So it's pretty basic in here. It looks like at least the board is actually made by Allen Bradley. That's a little bit of a bigger company. I don't know, maybe they weren't that big in 2007 and they were still working with this 90s style design. I think this is the CPU. It looks like we've got some expansion slots. We've got a couple programmable ROM chips, probably with the firmware on it. We have a backup battery that's getting a little fuzzy, and the firmware on here is actually from 2002, so even older than the rest of the unit. By the way, these bumpers look like they didn't put any thought into the design here. I think these are supposed to protect the corners, but they don't even overlap the edges, so if you drop this thing on its edge, it's absolutely gonna crack. They really only protect it if you drop it in one or two orientations. So the screen is soldered onto the main board there, and the connectors are just soldered directly in, so that's actually what this connector is on the back. It looks like, I don't know why there's another connector on the back. Maybe you could put a second screen on it somehow. The keyboard has this little extension ribbon cable inside. So yeah, I could probably throw all this away, put a Raspberry Pi in here, put a little modern LCD screen in here, and have a weird tablet with an inconvenient keyboard. I kind of already have some weird tablets with inconvenient keyboards, so yeah, this is not super useful for anything in my world. This plastic stick thing fell out and I have no idea where it goes back in here. So there we go, the Datamyte industrial measurement tablet. Maybe it was worth $20 in 2007. I kind of feel like I overpaid $20 for this thing, but maybe I can sell it for $10 on eBay. Yeah, not much else to say about this thing. I do apologize for making a boring video about a boring device. I was really kind of hoping this would do something interesting, or I could modify it into doing something interesting, but even with a Raspberry Pi in here, I would never use this. This keyboard is garbage, so yeah, maybe I'll just donate this to Free Geek or something. I don't know if it's even worth throwing it on eBay. If anybody has suggestions for this thing, if there's some killer app or crazy Easter egg I've missed, please let me know. Otherwise, yeah, I feel like I wasted 10 minutes of your time. Anyway, if you did sit through this whole video, I definitely appreciate it, and you can check out some of my other videos for weird vintage tech stuff that I find at auctions or in dumpsters or garage sales or wherever else, and hopefully we'll have something more interesting for the next one of these. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.